Welcome to Unbreakable Spirit, the channel where legends rise through struggle, where impossible stories become living proof that anyone, no matter where they come from, can rewrite their destiny. Today, we begin the extraordinary journey of David Goggins, a man who rose from a childhood marked by trauma and despair to become a symbol of unstoppable willpower. You will discover the roots of his resilience, the shadows of his upbringing, and the fire that would later forge him into something unstoppable. David Goggins was born on February 17, 1975 in Buffalo, New York, USA. From the outside, the Goggins family might have seemed ordinary, but behind closed doors, the reality was far darker than anyone could imagine. David was the second child of Trunnis Goggins and his then-wife Jackie. Trunnis, David's father, ran a thriving roller skating rink called Skateland, and from a business perspective, he was considered successful. But to his family, he was a tyrant. Trunnis Goggins was a man known for his charisma in public, but absolute brutality at home. He was controlling, violent, and abusive, not only emotionally, but physically. He forced young David, his brother Trunnis Jr., and his mother Jackie to work long hours at the skating rink, often late into the night. David, barely 6 or 7 years old, was working shifts that would exhaust most adults. After school, he would go straight to the skating rink, clean floors, handle equipment, and deal with customers until late in the night. There was no room for childhood, no freedom, just fear. But it wasn't just the endless labor. At home, Trunnis Goggins unleashed horrific violence. David, his brother, and their mother were regularly beaten. David would often hear the cries of his mother in the middle of the night, and sometimes he too would face his father's fury. The fear was constant. The silence was loud. David suffered not just physical abuse but emotional scars that would haunt him for years. He had to wear a mask at school, hiding bruises, hiding trauma, pretending everything was okay, but deep down, he was broken, confused, and angry. And it wasn't just the pain, it was the silence around it. No one talked about it, no one helped, no one came. Eventually, Jackie had enough. She made the hardest decision of her life, to escape with her sons. It was a terrifying leap, but one that changed everything. Late one night, while Trunnis was unaware, Jackie fled with young David and Trunnis Jr., leaving everything behind. They found refuge in Brazil, Indiana, a small, unfamiliar town where they hoped to rebuild their lives. But freedom came with its own struggles. Jackie had to start over from nothing. She worked tirelessly to support her children, while David tried to adjust to a new life far away from the violence he had known. But trauma doesn't vanish easily. The emotional wounds from his early years began to take a toll. David struggled in school, academically and socially. He suffered from learning disabilities and stuttering. Reading and writing were hard. His self-esteem was crushed. He often felt like a failure, like he didn't belong anywhere. On top of that, racism was another constant obstacle. As one of the only black students in a mostly white school, David was bullied, humiliated, and made to feel inferior. The mental weight kept piling on. The more he tried, the more he failed. Or so it seemed. In class, he would zone out, unable to focus. At home, he watched his mother struggle to keep the family afloat. And the mirror showed him something he couldn't ignore. He was becoming overweight. He had developed an unhealthy relationship with food, using it to cope with stress and depression. By his late teens, David was spiraling. Still, deep inside, there was a flicker, a hidden ember of hope waiting to ignite. In his desperation to escape the darkness in his mind, David made a decision. He would join the military. He thought becoming an Air Force pararescue man might give him purpose, a way out. But even that path proved harsh. During the training process, David was diagnosed with sickle cell trait, a genetic blood condition that forced him to leave training temporarily. He later tried to return, this time switching to a different role within the Air Force. But the dream of becoming a pararescue man faded. David completed his service but felt incomplete. He left the military overweight, depressed, and without direction. David Goggins had hit rock bottom. Working night shifts as a pest control technician, he sprayed for cockroaches in fast food kitchens, overweight, depressed, and drained of purpose. Every day felt like a curse. Every hour was heavier than the last. He hated what he saw in the mirror, a nearly 300-pound man with broken dreams and buried trauma. His childhood abuse still haunted him. His failures echoed like cruel reminders that he would never become someone different. And then, one night, everything changed. As he sat in front of the television, exhausted and hopeless, He stumbled upon a documentary about the United States Navy SEALs. It showed men going through Hell Week, crawling through cold surf, carrying boats on their heads, running for miles without rest. The pain, the suffering, the mental and physical torment. But instead of fear, David felt something else, a calling. He had found his mountain. In that moment, he decided he wanted to become a Navy SEAL. Not because he was strong, not because he was qualified, but because it was the hardest thing he had ever seen. And he wanted to prove to himself, more than anyone else, that he wasn't broken. Not permanently. There was one major problem: the Navy's weight limit for a SEAL candidate was 191 pounds. David weighed 297. That meant he had to lose over 100 pounds in just 3 months to even be eligible for the training. Most people would have given up just looking at the numbers, but David wasn't like most people, not anymore. He created a brutal plan to transform himself. He ran every day, biked, swam, did high-intensity workouts. He followed an extreme low-calorie diet, cutting everything that made him comfortable. He lived in pain, intentionally. His body ached, but his soul was waking up. Here's what he did to stay focused. He visualized success. Every night he imagined finishing Hell Week. He kept a mirror he called the accountability mirror. On it, he wrote his goals and called himself out. He counted small victories. Every lost pound, every completed workout, they were steps forward. He embraced suffering. Pain became his teacher. He reminded himself of what failure felt like and swore never to go back. It wasn't easy. He failed many times. He first applied to the SEALs and failed the ASVAB written exam, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. His learning disabilities and poor education haunted him. But instead of quitting, he studied harder than ever before. He applied again, and passed. David Goggins' journey through Navy SEAL training was unlike any other. Most endure the brutal Hell Week once. But Goggins went through it not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. An extraordinary feat that speaks volumes about his relentless drive and mental toughness. Hell Week, the most infamous part of BUD/AS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, is 5.5 days of continuous physical and mental punishment. Candidates sleep for a total of only about 4 hours over the entire week. They are pushed to the brink with cold water immersion, endless running with logs and boats, hours of surf torture, and constant verbal pressure. It's designed to break even the strongest. 75% of candidates usually drop out before completing Hell Week. Goggins' first attempt at Hell Week started off with high hopes. He had trained hard to qualify for SEAL training, losing over 100 pounds in 3 months just to meet the weight requirement. But early into Hell Week, his body began to fail him. He developed stress fractures in both of his legs. The pain was unbearable. Every step felt like his legs were splitting open. His body was breaking down rapidly. Despite trying to push through, the injuries became too severe. The instructors pulled him out. He had no choice but to ring the bell, the symbol of quitting. It was devastating. But he didn't give up. With his legs still healing, Goggins fought to stay in the program. He returned months later for a second Hell Week. This time his mind was even sharper, his will stronger. But fate dealt him another cruel blow. He developed a severe case of pneumonia. His lungs were inflamed, his breathing labored. Despite coughing blood and experiencing unbearable fatigue, he kept pushing. He refused to quit, but once again his body couldn't take it. Medical staff pulled him out again, a second failure, another heartbreak. Most would have walked away forever, but Goggins wasn't like most. He came back for a third Hell Week, a final chance to prove he belonged among the elite. This time his body still ached, but he was ready. His mind had become an iron fortress. He had mastered the 40% rule, his personal philosophy that when your body feels like it's done, you've only tapped into 40% of your potential. So when the pain came, he told himself, "You're just at 40%, there's so much more in the tank." During this third Hell Week, Goggins endured every brutal challenge. The freezing surf, the log PT, the boat carries, the sleep deprivation. But this time he did not break. Even with taped-up stress fractures and a battered body, he kept moving. He refused to let his mind surrender. And finally, after days of unrelenting agony, he made it through. He became one of the rare individuals to survive Hell Week, but more incredibly, he was the only person in Navy SEAL history to complete 3 Hell Weeks in 1 year. Goggins' life defines what it means to be unbreakable. His story in Hell Week is not just about physical toughness. It's about resilience, mental discipline, and refusing to let pain, doubt, or failure write the final chapter. But he didn't stop there. He went on to complete training with the United States Army Rangers, where he graduated top of his class. He also passed Air Force Tactical Air Controller training. He had now succeeded across 3 elite branches of the military, a feat few in history have accomplished. But Goggins wasn't done. He set out to prove to the world, and to himself, that he could master not only the battlefield but his mind. He entered the world of ultramarathons, endurance racing, and world records. In 2013, he earned a spot in the Guinness World Records by doing 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours. His hands were torn, his arms were numb, but he didn't quit. He ran more than 60 ultramarathons, including the Badwater 135, a race through Death Valley in temperatures over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The Moab 240, a 240-mile ultramarathon through rugged mountain terrain. The Hurt 100 in Hawaii. In some races, he ran on broken legs. In others, he collapsed from exhaustion, only to stand back up and finish. David Goggins had turned pain into power. In 2018, he released his memoir, Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind, and Defy the Odds. The book became a bestseller, touching millions across the globe. In it, Goggins opens up about his childhood abuse, failures, self-hatred, and how he overcame all of it. The book is not just his story, it's a guide for others to build mental toughness, to take ownership of their lives, and to become more than they ever thought possible. He later followed it with another book, Never Finished, reinforcing the idea that growth has no finish line. David Goggins teaches us that the human mind is far more powerful than we think, that your past does not define your future, that no matter how broken, how weak, how tired you feel, there is more inside you. You're not finished. You've only scratched the surface. He is living proof that discipline beats motivation, that accountability is power, and that suffering, when embraced, becomes transformation. So if you're watching this right now, remember you are capable of more than the pain, more than the doubt, more than the excuses. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to refuse to quit. This is Unbreakable Spirit. And if David Goggins' journey inspired you today, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe for more stories like this video if it touched you. Comment your favorite part or lesson below, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. You are not done, you are just getting started.